Oh my gosh, thank goodness you're here, because really, who would listen to the podcast? I mean, I already have, because I edited the thing. Hey, it's me, Greg Delmage, and I got some news for you. So first of all, you know what's great? Free stuff. Free stuff is pretty great. And we over at RPG Fan have some free stuff to give you. Remember that time we reviewed Night of the Round's new Final Fantasy VII tribute album called 7? Well, that metal band is going to be giving away a copy to one lucky person who comes over to our site. You got 7 ways to enter. At the moment, there's only 101 entries as of this recording, with 14 days left. And that sounds like some pretty good odds at the moment. So get on over to rpgfan.com and get yourself entered. So we've got this big awesome feature that Zach was helming for us and getting the team to put together, and we finally pulled it out, calling it This Isn't Even My Final Form. It's an anime adaptations of our favorite RPGs feature, looking at various RPGs properties that have been made into video or vice versa. So go give a read of this very awesome feature, and there's a lot of films out there that I didn't know existed. Like, Ys has a movie? I didn't know that. Did you? We can talk about it. Anyways, go check out the feature. Crowdfunding Chronicles has continued its chronicling with this, oh my gosh, adorable looking game called Kaiju Dating Sim. It's funded. It could probably use more money because it's got some lovely extended goals. There's 2 more days to get it on if you want to get it, but oh my gosh, it just looks the cutest, and yeah, let's get this made. Pete Leavitt, remember that guy? He's been here a few times. Remember that time we talked about giant robots? Well, yeah, we do that a lot too. In that theme, Pete's been playing BattleTech for us, as he's been talking about on the podcast, and he has written up a lovely review to fill in that gap on our site, giving it RPG Fan Editor's Choice. Because, I mean, I'm not shocked that he loved it, but it seems Harebrained Schemes has been doing a fabulous job, as he has continued to talk of, so go give his review a read if you want to see the nitty-gritty about this game. Less enjoyable was my playthrough of Wizardry Labyrinth of Lost Souls. I talked about it on the last episode of the podcast. My review has come out, and we also did a video review covering my review as well, so if you want to see what this dated game is looking like and why I wasn't a big fan, you can watch the video and you can read the review. Half Past Fate has just dropped, and Alana Huggs was reviewing that for us. It seems okay. It looks lovely, but it doesn't seem to quite live up to it in the gameplay front. So if you want to go check out this lovely graphic adventure that's on Switch and Windows, and see if you want to add to your Switch library that I'm sure is huge at this point, then go check out her review and see if this one's worth your while. It's funny that, I brought up this whole, there's a few RPG adjacent reviews that have been coming up for film and such and TV, and all of a sudden now there's just a bunch of them. So it's worth noting that we reviewed the Mewtwo Strikes Back Evolution that the Pokemon Company has brought us, revisiting the, of course, original Mewtwo Strikes Back. That was 2D animation, so now we got this lovely 3D update to it. My daughter Gwen has watched it. She was a fan, as it's expected. So go check out Peter's review of the film and see if you can go check it on Netflix if it's worth your while, or if it's playing in a theater near you. I know that happened back when it came out. It might still be doing the circulation. I'm not sure. You may have been noticing some new video content on YouTube, and you would be noticing correctly. We've been checking out basically the opening moments of various RPGs and slowly building that collection. We'll continue adding to it, but you can check out our playthrough of the first 50 minutes of Final Fantasy VII demo, which is basically the whole demo, but it is those opening moments from Final Fantasy VII. So if you want to get a preview of the game, if you haven't picked it up for yourself, or you're thinking, maybe I'll get a PS4 just for this, go check out that playthrough and see if it's for you. And finally, we take our usual visit over to the music department with a review of Octopath Traveler Arrangements Break Boost Extend, because Break Boost was a rad album, and I'm glad that they just went back and did more with that. It made it to our feature list of best music of last year, so if you didn't check it out there, go read Patrick Gann's extended review of it and give this one a listen. It's a really solid album. All that being said, if you hadn't heard yet, this article with the preamble that we usually do to our reviews, we did a lovely send-off to Marcos Gaspar, who you may remember from past podcast episodes as well. he's he's dad. He's a busy guy. He's got other things to do, and he is leaving the site, sadly. So we are sad to see him go, but thank him for... Marcos, you've been a rad guy. You've been great on the podcast. You're very knowledgeable about music, and you're just such a charming, helpful, lovely guy. So feel free to say nice things to Marcos, folks. And with that, I'm going to send you on over to episode 184 of Random Encounter. Hello, everybody in RPG fan listening land. We're back with another episode of Random Encounter. I'm Greg Delmage, the host of episode 184 today, and announcing exciting things. I have a co-host now. We've, I guess, promoted him because he's here enough. We like him a lot. He's a pretty knowledgeable person and keeps up with things because he's a very consistent member on our reviews writing team. Introducing my consistent now co-host, John O'Logan.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome in. Thank you for accepting the role laid before you. Like I said, I appreciate your knowledge and having you here at my side more often than not, although digitally, I guess.
Thank you for talking to me about it. It was super exciting when you asked.
Yeah, it's gonna be good to have some more consistency, I guess, because it always has helped in past podcasts and past episodes when two people make the team come together, kind of thing. And speaking of consistent hosts in the podcast realm here at RPG Fan, I also have Mike Solosi back.
Hi, great to be back.
Yeah, we haven't heard from you not in a year, but that's a used up joke. You know
a calendar year, sure. It has been a calendar year.
It has been a calendar year. But thank you both for being on the podcast with me today. If folks want to find me, you can find me at Greg Delmage, pretty much anywhere you need to find me. I'm G Delmage. Can't even say my own name. You look it up on the Discord. And John O'Logan, where can folks find you in social media?
You guys can find me on Twitter at John O'Logan.
And Mike Solosi, what's your litany of handles?
At The Real Monsoon on Twitter most of the time, and at Evoker for Dogs at other times.
And both of which are just delightful. I always enjoy hearing those handles. At any rate, here we are. We've played some games again, because, it's what we like doing, apparently. And since that calendar year, when we talked about some of the best games of last year, one of them being Final Fantasy XIV, there has been a new patch for Final Fantasy XIV fans called Echoes of a Fallen Star. That was like mid-February, I think we were saying, February 17th, possibly.
Yes,
either way.
Around then.
Yeah, and Mike, you've been one of our more consistent players up there with Caitlin and a couple other team members. But yeah, how's that experience been?
I'm not at the level of Caitlin or Mike Salvato, but I have been a consistent FF14 player since 2016-ish, and Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers was RPG Fans' Game of the Year for 2019, a pleasant surprise for me. And yeah, I got... I'm an on-again, off-again player of that game, but I got back on the wagon in January in anticipation of that patch, and I've been playing it almost every day, definitely every week, throughout February and March. And
nice. What about the patch wanted you to come back to it?
Well, like the big numbered patches, the 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4 stuff is always where they drop new exciting content, and the content delivery system for Final Fantasy XIV is really, really consistent. So before we knew a word of the content in Echoes of a Fallen Star, people knew it was going to be one special trial, a bunch of story quests, one new dungeon, and one new set of and a set of 4 mini raids, because like it's very consistent what they deliver each patch, but just the content of which is always, consistently good and interesting. But this time, it's a Ruby weapon trial fighting the FF14 version of the super boss from FF7.
Nice, which is timely.
Yeah, a new set of Eden raids, and without getting too detailed into it, Eden is the 8-player raid tier for Shadowbringers, and this one has twisted versions of a couple Final Fantasy classic summons. One of the fights in the new raids is you're fighting Ramuh, the thunder summon, but he's sort of in the body of a centaur, so he's like Ramuh and Ixion combined.
Oh, dope.
Yeah,
that sounds horrifyingly awesome.
Yeah, he looks awesome, and that's the only one of that set of raids I've done so far. It was quite challenging for me being an average player. And let's see, Ruby Weapon, Ramuh, a bunch of new story dungeons, and a bunch of new story quests, and the new dungeon is a really nice, cool underwater ruins dungeon that takes that takes the musical theme from Sastasha, the very first dungeon of the whole game, back in 2013, level 15 content, and remixes it into a jazzy big band theme.
That sounds slick. I need to go listen to that after this.
Yeah, and Sastasha is piratey, and you fight and you fight Sahagin, basically mer people. And this one is called Anamnesis Aniter, and it is different from Sastasha, but it remixes the song, and you do fight some mer people. And another one of the bosses, you might like this, Greg, is a Final Fantasy Tactics Cyclops.
Oh, that guy was so
summon.
underappreciated. Like,
yeah, exactly. I haven't heard.
Nice.
I haven't seen that guy since FF Tactics came out on the PSP, and here he is in FF14. And
that's awesome.
Yeah,
does it look pretty the same too? Big old purple horn.
Yep, the big old purple horn with an orange tunic deal. He's a boss in the new dungeon. So again, Final Fantasy XIV, always really consistently fun content. A lot of weird references to Final Fantasy games past. And and I've had a lot of fun with the new patch, but I've done most of the story stuff in it. But I still have some raids to finish, and I am logging in at least 5 days a week just so I can get my daily quests done and slowly build my way to some fancy new gear.
Nice. Question for you. When you talk about those twisted classic summons, was Retro Encounter's favorite summon boyfriend Ifrit in there, or?
Yes. This is the second leg of the Eden raids, and the first leg had the summon Eden from FF8. And then twisty versions of Titan and Leviathan. And this one has a twisty versions of Ramuh, Ifrit, and Garuda, plus
nice.
some other stuff that's a little bit spoilery. So I'll avoid talking about those.
When you say twisty versions, do you mean like amalgams?
Like, are they all mashups, or are they
not
twisted
exactly
in different ways?
Twisted in different ways. It's like you're basically trying to restore mana or ether or whatever you want to call it to a giant wasteland that was completely annihilated in an apocalypse. And you found out a way to do that. You can restore the elements to it one by basically summoning them. It's like summoning embodiments of them. So you're basically summoning elemental spirits or primals, they're called in FF14, from the previous world into this world to try and restore mana, but they come out crazy just because this is a twisted new world. And like the version of Titan that you fight has sort of wheels on its back and turns into almost like a go-kart version of Titan, driving all around and knocking people over.
Leviathan, Final Fantasy 13.
Yeah, Leviathan has two heads. And again, I mentioned Centaur Ramuh, and the Ifrit and Garuda fight is Garuda is the wind summon from FF14. I'm not sure if she appeared in Final Fantasy games before 14, but you fight.
I can't remember either. It sounds familiar, but maybe I'm just thinking of it as a
fight. Just as something from mythology, or maybe from or maybe as a previous.
I know you fought
fight.
them, but I don't think you actually got to summon them. Yeah.
Yeah, and for a while I thought I was confusing them with Siren, which is a boss fight from an old FF14 dungeon. But yeah, you fight Ifrit and Garuda together, and you mentioned amalgams, Jono, and I hesitated.
Amalgams, yeah.
Because you fight Garuda and Ifrit like a tag team, and then they Voltron together into a combined Ifrit Garuda amalgam.
Very cool.
I've watched a video of that fight because whenever I do a raid. Because if you make a mistake in the raid, the whole party can wipe. I always watch a video ahead of time, so I make as few mistakes as possible, and we can actually win. So I've watched a video of Ifrit Garuda, but I haven't done it yet. I've only done Ramuh in the new set.
It sounds cool.
Cool.
It is cool. Like Final Fantasy XIV raids are intimidating because they're the Savage version of them is the second hardest kind of fight in the entire game. But it was intimidating. I didn't even get into raiding until less than a year ago, and again, I started playing this game in 2016. But it's really really fun, and they're really crazy creative boss fights, and basically all of my favorite content in the game is either trials or raids because they're just really cool boss fights that Final Fantasy XIV does super well. And I haven't done all the stuff in 5.2 yet. I haven't even done all the stuff in 5.1 yet because I haven't done very many extreme trials or savage raids, but it's really really great, and it's giving fans what they want, and I'm really really looking forward to another 2 or 2.5 months or so when we try to figure out what the next set of near raids are, and whatever dungeon we get in 5.3.
Very cool. And so with raids, your raids are like your standard, like you need a group to party up with and do them. And then savage raids are just beefed up versions of the standard raids, like they're just more challenging. Is that how it works again? I forget.
You're basically right for savage. But for most raids in FF14 are 8 players, and you can enter a roulette to do them. Basically, just
right. You don't need to make your own, but you can jump in where they're
yeah,
needed, kind of thing.
You can jump in when they're needed, or you can look up to see what look up the party finder to see what raids people are trying to mass groups for and jump in there. Or you can roll with a preset team of your friends. Or if you have like 6 friends and you need 2 more people, you can team up as 6 and then try to get the last 2 via roulette. And you get a bonus if you do a raid roulette every day. So basically throws you into a random raid that you're qualified for. But you get experience and item bonuses for finishing it because you're helping someone else by entering the pool.
That's fantastic. It means that if you want to play the game, if you want to do a raid, you can. You don't have to get friends. It sounds like a great system.
Yeah, it works for dungeons, raids, and trials very well, except for a couple of the raids in 2.0 don't have roulettes because they had a different design philosophy then, and they sort of evolved into modern Final Fantasy XIV raiding. So I don't think you can use roulette for the level 50 Bahamut raids, but for every other multiplayer content in the game, you can use preset parties or party finder or roulettes, and they give you rewards for helping people with old content, which keeps it's hard to find a really inactive piece of content in Final Fantasy XIV as a result.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I was asking because you mentioned mini raids. So what are mini raids by comparison to like your standard raids?
I'm not sure what I meant by mini raids.
Oh, okay. I think you said there's 4 mini raids.
Oh, okay. Yes. Basically, the raid tier every patch is 12 individual fights. I think it's 13 for the Bahamut ones and then 12 for all the others. But they're released in blocks. So they released 4 at the time of Shadowbringers last summer, and then just last month in 5.2 they added the next 4. So as that collection of 12, eventually 12 is the Eden raid, but then they're blocks of 4. Which the first 4 is called Eden's Gate, and the second 4 is called Eden's Verse. And within Eden's Gate and Eden's Verse, there's 4 fights, and that's what I was referring to mini raids.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I was just curious how that differed.
Yeah, and in Eden's Verse, it's the Remove fight, then the Garuda Ifrit fight, and then 2 more that I don't want to spoil. And I have not done all of them yet.
Okay, gotcha. And and I was reading there's the Qitari Beast Tribe. Was that thing already in there since
no, it was not.
5, or did they add more stuff in now with this as well? Because they look cute as heck.
Yeah, that is new to 5.2. They add beast tribes in various patches. I think I think there's 3 per expansion usually, and so this is the second one. So we'll get another beast tribe in probably 5.4. But the Qitari or Chitari are like kobolds, I think, or like Kikarin, either one of those two from Realm Reborn. But they're sort of a scavenger tribe. And so the Qitari quests are all for gathering classes. So if you want to level up your gatherers or get high level materials for crafting, the Qitari tribe quests should be a very good resource for that. And this is a little bit inside baseball in the weeds, and I apologize in advance. But the song that plays in the Rak'tika Greatwood, which is where the Qitari are, is one of the more notorious songs from Shadowbringers. it's a very pleasant song, but it has a singer singing in a high pitched manner, la he, la he. A lot of
that's the one that
times, yeah.
Caitlin was talking about. Yeah.
I'm not surprised Caitlin talked about it because it's one of the signature songs in the game. But in the Qatari Beast Tribe quest, they explain what the lyrics of that song mean.
Oh,
and there's
that's
even
fun.
there's even a quest called Lahi, and I think the gist of it is Lahi means wake up, and the song is saying wake up everyone, it's time to be alive in the forest or something, I don't know, but yeah,
Much friendlier version of Chop Suey.
yes, it's and a much friendlier version of Rage Against the Machine as well.
Yep, you got that one too. There we go.
Yep, yeah.
I just hope you can get her in their hats. I like their hats.
I know that you can get a minion that's wearing one of their hats. That you can get a hat version of the Great Serpent of Ronka. I'm not sure if there's gear that includes the hats because I don't have any gatherers high enough level to do Qatari quests. I'm not very invested in gathering or crafting. I'm strictly battling.
And yeah,
sleeping.
It sounds like
sleeping.
It's
I like
a
sleeping
whole
in this
other
game.
investment for sure.
There is an unlimited amount of things to do in Final Fantasy XIV. It's totally overwhelming if you go in there without any idea. But I focused on the things I like to do the most. I sort of even picked like 5 or 6 jobs that I'm only gonna level up these because if I try to level up everything, I'm gonna go totally insane. And basically just setting small goals for myself and making sure I'm limited to certain things makes me not completely lose myself to addiction. But Final Fantasy
important.
Final Fantasy 14 is awesome. The 5.2 stuff is a lot of fun. The Omega Raid is probably my favorite because it's just a really fun, creative, dramatic boss fight. And I'm probably not going to play all 12 months out of 2020, but they at least have my money for a while longer because I gotta finish those Eden's Verse raids.
And what is your favorite minion you have?
Oh boy, I have a lot of minions.
Would you earn through quests or can you buy them?
You can buy them. You get them through. You get them through quests. You get some in the story. There's some of them are random drops from dungeons, trials, and raids. There's a zillion ways to get things. I'll double your answer. I'll tell you my favorite mount and my favorite minion.
I'll take it.
My favorite mount is the True Griffin, which you get from doing some Ananta Beast Tribe quests. They're snake ladies living in a sort of a rocky mountain area of the world. And I just think the Griffin looks awesome. It immediately replaced my Chocobo once I got it. And my favorite minion, I think, is Pororogo.
Oh, that is very slick looking. Sorry to interrupt. That's a really rad looking thing.
It's a nice looking Griffin. And once I unlocked it, I'm like, oh man, this is really good. I like this a lot. And my favorite minion is Pororogo, which you get from a dungeon in Heavensward, I think. And it's a little frog with a mage hat and a staff. And I think it's very cute.
That seems pretty on brand for you.
Yep.
Is that a frog evoker?
Maybe. Let's see. The dungeon that you get it from is a little creepy because it's a tower where everything's upside down, and the final boss at the end of it is the Calcabrina dolls from FF4.
This game's fan service is incredible.
No, it's completely insane, and I mean, Greg, you're a big Tactics Ogre fan, right?
I'm a fan of it. I haven't gotten into it yet.
There's a 200 floor super dungeon based on the world of Ogre Battle and Tactics Ogre in FF14.
I am in.
So like,
take my money.
And there's I'm a big fan of Super Sentai and Power Rangers. There is a raid boss where 4 goblin mechs Voltron together into a super robot.
It's just fan service, the video game.
It is Japanese RPG fan service, the video game, and
but it's not. It doesn't sound like it's just for the purpose of fan service. It's in
doesn't.
service of the game and like the gameplay. That's hard to pull off, and it's incredibly impressive that they consistently have done it for 10 years. Well, I guess 7 years.
Yeah, and the story of FF14 rising from the ashes to become the big success it is now is one of the most crazy video game development stories I've ever heard. Square Enix is releasing some mini documentaries on it. A recent one came out in the first week of March, and there's a really good there's a really good series of mini docs done by NoClip about FF14 that were released I think a year or 2 years ago that are also very good if you're interested in the story of this game. But Yeah, I don't want to ramble too much on it because I know we talk about FF14 a lot on this podcast, but it has been my biggest distraction from doing things like single player RPGs or other podcasts or my other interests the past couple of years, just because I have not gotten this deep into a video game since since my Monster Hunter peak in the early 2010s.
Man, I'm terrified when I eventually fold and install this thing.
I'll take the plunge with you.
I should mention that the free trial lets you do any content up to level 35. So if you want to download that huge file, you can play, a good several hours of that game uninterrupted. And the max content right now is level 80. So that's the first 15-20% of the game, because really after level 50, like level 50 to 60 is about the same length as level 1 to 50, and so on. The expansions are very meaty games in their own right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Greg, it's a terrible idea of us doing this at the same time. There wouldn't be an episode of Random for like months. We have to take turns.
We have convinced Hillary, Zach, and Joe to try FF14 for the first time, all in the past 6 or 7 months.
That's right, Joe did just dive into. I saw that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Zach is in Heavensward content already. I'm proud of him.
He's writing features, playing review. Where did these people find the time? I was even just saying this in the last episode, as you probably recall, in like my preamble. Like, how does like half of our review team get through games so fast, so many of them in like a week's time, and I'm still like beating my head against the wall in Wizardry. It's like,
If I knew, I would tell you.
Right? It's a power, that's for sure.
Well, I mean, I think it's also family structure. Like, you have a kid, you have a kid, I have a snake. The time
yes, the one is far less demanding. That's true.
Exactly.
The snake, if in case anyone's wondering, is the more demanding. That joke backfired on me. I'm just going to move on.
Yeah, presumably you can't feed children mice.
The snake is probably better at hide and seek than your kid, but other than that, I can't think of very many more challenging bits.
I had a friend that had a snake that was a constant escape artist. And in Vancouver, there's a common household setup where they will split up a level of the place into 2 houses, basically like little condo apartments with like a 1-bedroom, and they're ridiculously too small for the price they're paying. But anyways, it's a thing. But there's usually a door separating the 2 because at some point they were all one unified floor. And the snake would frequently escape and then crawl under that door into the neighbor's apartment, which usually, obviously not so fun for my friend, but it is still funny to think of these people coming home and being like, there's a coral snake in our kitchen.
Coral snake?
But the one that looks like the coral snake, though, but it's not deadly.
That's a king snake.
Thank you.
Yeah,
because the coral snake is the deadly one, right?
Yeah, I would be a little concerned if I found one of those in my kitchen.
Yeah. Coral snakes are deadly. King snakes are coral snake mimics. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That's the one I'm thinking of, because I knew it looked like one or the other, and I couldn't remember the name. Thank you.
Yeah, it's all right.
My snake has only ever escaped once, and it was my partner's. It still is my partner's snake, and I sort of inherited it because I live with Snake now. And it was within the first few months that we were dating, and she calls me in a massive panic because Snake escaped. And I just remember sitting on her bedroom floor with like multiple boxes of tissue paper and cardboard tubes, creating snake traps out of that and duct tape, trying to figure out a way to catch the snake. And then she found it 5 minutes later in her laundry hamper.
Amazing. I just hope that you took a moment to quote some Metal Gear and just shout snake into the ether.
Snake, snake, snake.
I was trying to remember the rhyme that they taught me as a kid to tell the difference between a coral and a king snake. I think it's red on yellow, poison fellow, red on black, venom lack. So coral snakes are the ones with yellow bands in between the red and the black, and king snakes don't have yellow bands.
Okay,
I think.
Yeah, there was some sort of like limerick or something.
I think it's red on yellow, dangerous fellow, red on black, venom lack. I think. I'd have to Google that, but it's don't joke around with venomous snakes.
Yeah, don't confuse them. It's that's the important motto right there.
Yeah. Mine's just a cute little corn snake.
Also adorable.
Named Hephaestus.
I like it. What I also have been liking, because we'll use that as a segue. Why not? I was going to use banging a head against the wall, but we went off on snakes, because why not? I've been doing both of those things with Stone Shard. We had that go into early access back on February 6th, and I was wanting to get to it far sooner until, I got lost in Wizardry. But that's finally out of the way. And Stone Shard is a cool little roguelike. It plays like you're kind of top down, like grid by grid. Every move you make, they make a move kind of system, turn-based system. And economy-wise, skill-building-wise, everything else plays like Diablo and Torchlight for playing inventory Tetris and upping your stats and stuff. But it's got like so much minutia in all the stats and stuff too. Like each of your body parts kind of takes injuries. And you can like break your leg or have your torso break, and then you'll have to splint it to like kind of manage the injury, and all that stuff as they get damaged kind of reduces your overall health recovery time per turn kind of thing. And like, so there's a lot of like little minutia in that, with damage to specific types of damage, not damage, resistance to specific types of damage, and different kinds of spell trees and everything like that all again feeds into a lot of the RNG of the game. But it is brutally hard. It has like an tutorial prologue, essentially. You start out as this character named Venick, who's got this gravelly old man voice, which suits him quite well. And he's a relic hunter who apparently was kind of doing not necessarily like a one last job, but has been doing more or less some retirement jobs, as you come to find out, looking for the titular stone shard, and ends up somehow in a cell next to a dead companion, and basically like, how did I get here? And there's this creepy vampire fellow basically saying like, oh, we'll be using you soon enough kind of thing, and you figure out how to escape through tutorial means. And very early on in the tutorial basically says straight up like, hey, you're not the chosen one. You're probably going to die a bunch and you can't save. You can only save at inns or like these rest campfire spots, which I haven't found yet. But the early dungeon, basically, there's like 2 checkpoints, and if you don't hit them, the amount of times I restarted, I lost like 2 hours of my life trying to get through just this prologue dungeon. And it was absolutely brutal, because I'd have like a good run of like 1 or 2 floors of the dungeon, and feel like I was getting some really good random gear that I was finding. I went up a level, so I had assigned out some of my stats, and had chosen different skills for each level I went up, and then when you die, it just reset me back to the beginning of like the randomly generated dungeon that I was in. And
is it like Diablo or Dark Souls, where if you find your corpse in the dungeon, you can get some of that back?
Sadly, no.
Because you mentioning campfires as a save point made me think of bonfires in Dark Souls, and also the punishing difficulty made me think of the same thing.
Right? And you would hope, but no, every single time it would set me back to this part in the prologue where you come into basically like a ruined office that belonged to like the head clergy, a member of this monastery it seems you're in. And it would just reset me back in there just as I entered it. So I had to like reassign my skill points, clear out the useless crap that was in my inventory, pick up all the stuff that I had found in that room once again, and then go back down. So I was the tedium of redoing things and then having to go back into another new procedurally generated dungeon. And like, it definitely warns you, like, you're going to want to kite stuff. Like, it straight up tells you, don't try and take on too many enemies at once. But at the same time, that can get tedious when it's just a very repetitive kind of gameplay format. So I'm really hoping they do a bit more balancing and they don't just straight up leave it as get good as their answer to it.
Yeah, this dungeon sounds a bit more like a pure rogue game rather than a roguelite.
Yeah, I guess it would be a pure rogue. As opposed, because roguelikes, I guess, more borrow it and put it into a different kind of gameplay mechanic where, this is straight up like your top-down, step-by-step kind of game.
Yeah, but
well, I mean, it feels like a loot action RPG similar to Diablo, but they're really leaning into the punishing difficulty edge of it that, like old school Diablo sort of had, and modern games have less of. So maybe they're trying to capture some of that audience that Dark Souls old PC game audience that wants a more hardcore experience.
Which I've seen plenty of those experiences released on mobile, because it definitely lends itself very well to like the touchscreen mechanic and keeping the more simple pixelated graphics. And like the pixel art in this game is stunning. If this game doesn't appeal to you visually, it'll definitely capture you with its audio production as well. Like all the sound effects are fantastic so far. The voice work is great. There's like great pacing, great tone. It sounds like the actors are actually listening to each other. The performances are solid, and I can't recommend that work enough in this game, and then then the whole visual appeal of it is definitely something that caught my eye out the gate if you look that up. But it can just be really, really punishing, and it took me again probably 5 or 6 tries to get to like the final checkpoint right before like the prologue boss, and even then I had to run through that a few times too, of figuring out the different patterns and how to kind of get through its different mechanics kind of stuff. But it does similar sort of things that we've seen in other games where it telegraphs a move kind of ahead of time, so to speak. Most enemies will have spells or stuff like that that'll show the area of effect, so you hopefully have a turn or two to get out of the way sometimes, depending on the nature of the spell. Because all the enemies are basically, other characters, for lack of a better term. Just they've built them with their own full run of skills and stats and such, and you can look at any enemy, right-click on them and inspect them, so you can kind of see what sort of powers they have, how long it'll take them to recharge if they have expent one, so you can definitely strategize a bit and figure out how to weigh your options and if it's a good time to close or not. Because until you act again in any way, shape, or form, or choose to pass your turn, so to speak, like nothing happens. So it's not real time, of course. And that's nice. That gives you time to consider, but there's the amount of times where I was sitting there with like 5 hit points left and like there's no restorative items that really seem to be. Like right now, the only means I've seen of restoring my health is just through resting, which you can only do if there's no enemies around. Or the very slow, like every so often turns, you'll recover health. But when you're too busy trying to outrun area of effect attacks or long range attacks, it's only a matter of time, basically. So that got really frustrating when I was trying to, I'm like, is there any way I can give myself a quick health boost? Anything. And there's random skills that'll come into play every once in a while, these random perks that your character will activate. Like there's a second wind every once in a while, but it seems completely random. So I don't know how that came in. It would give me like a strength boost, and it would boost up my hit points, which was always welcome, but it wasn't always guaranteed. So it's like I felt very out of control sometimes, and you get affected by so many of like the little mini issues of life, by like having hunger affect you, thirst affects you, and all that stuff affects like your health recovery. And then, like I said, there's all the little injuries and stuff like that. You can get make yourself drunk, which is does the usual, like makes the screen all hazy, but it also confuses your character every once in a while, so they might go the opposite direction from what you want them to do and stuff like that.
Are there any benefits to getting drunk?
Well, it cures thirst, and it can and like different drinks will do different things. Yeah, like bolster your strength and stuff like that.
I feel like a junior high school.
They should make one drunken style martial arts build that gives you extra bonuses from just being drunk, and make alcohol a resource and not just a condition.
And I would love that. I think that'd be super cool, and I'm curious, if that will be something down the road. Because once you do get through the prologue, it takes you to this inn that's essentially in, like, for the moment, it seems to be like the hub town. And the character that you were just playing as, Venick, is just sitting there chatting with somebody else, and is like, and that's how I came to be here, basically. And then is like, well, anyways, what have you been up to? And then you get to choose another character to be. And it seems like down the line, eventually, I think you'll get a party. I haven't gotten that far in, I'm not sure, but it seems to be building towards that. Like him saying, hey, do some tasks around town for us, and then you and I can travel along. He's like, I just hurt my leg, and I can't travel very far without like a horse and a cart kind of thing. So go talk to the mayor and do some quests, and there we go. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment in the hub town, which is a nice breath of fresh air, because now I can actually save by spending a night at the inn. And, I have access to better gear and stuff like that, and I can sell stuff. But it also was kind of annoying because I was playing with Venick and playing the usual game of, again, hoarding and playing inventory Tetris, where you're like, oh, that thing's worth like 200 gold. That thing's worth 600 gold. I might want to sell that later, even if I can't use it right now. And you're trying to figure out, should I keep more food or should I keep this $600 vest? And weighing those options. And when you get to town, it turns out none of that mattered because you weren't able to sell it. So that's why part of me is hoping I'll eventually rejoin Venick again, and maybe all that stuff will be there and then I'll pay off. Or if it was just a big waste of my time and stressing me out trying to figure out what I should and should not have kept, and instead wait in favor of better stuff to keep me alive.
I like the meta implications of that, though. The idea that your character is like, and that's how I got here. Because you restarted the game like 4 times because you kept dying, which means that this guy was sitting there continuously screwing up the telling of the story and kept saying, wait, let me go back to the beginning.
That's really funny. That sounds a little bit like Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, which is The framework of it is that the prince is telling the princess the story of what's happened to him over the past few days, and whenever you die, he goes, "Wait a second, no, that's not what happened. Let me start over." And and if, through very frustrating parts of the game, you might hear, "No, that's not how it happened," a lot.
That's basically how this felt. I guess at the end of it, when you get there, it's a very good point. And then you get these 4 archetypes right now, and it seems to be outside of the beta, you'll get the beta, you'll be able to make your own character, but they have 4 built-in ones that you can choose. There's like a dwarf warrior and a female warrior knight, a runaway like wizard person, and a ranger, former royal ranger or something. So they got like 4 different very strong class archetypes of like, your usual axe wielder, sword and shield, archer, dagger specialist, and magic specialist. So you can kind of try different flavors for the beta, which is it's pretty neat. So I chose the sword maiden, and there's, like I said, there was a dwarf. There's this. It seems like there's like a drow or whatever at some point that was in my party when I was Venic and he parted ways. So like they have a bunch of different races, but as the game clearly states, the races don't really matter except for gameplay flavor. And in like your character sheet, it'll show there's a bio that tells you about the characters, and so it all just kind of contributes to world building. And same with picking a gender. There's not much to it, but it will potentially offer some different conversation options, which I did see playing as the girl. I went into one of the stores, and the guy was like, a woman wielding a sword. Like, I'd never. And then it was basically the choice of just to ignore him or just be like, you got a problem with that, which starts a whole different conversation strain. So it's kind of...
Was there a third option to just beat his ass?
Sadly, there was not. Possibly because she's wise enough knowing that there are guards outside everywhere.
Maybe that branches off from the second option.
Yeah, it's possible. I did go with the, well, do you have an issue with that? And he just kind of explained, like, maybe I'm just a curmudgeon, but this and this and that. And it was more than fed into a general grumbling at like the swords for hire at large, as opposed to just simply women, but mostly just like, yeah, I guess just him saying like, as if it's gotten this bad that even women now have to fight, kind of thing. I don't know.
I love when constructive dialogue happens in RPGs.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was funny too, because actually in that commentary, he actually also calls out that RPG classic, what's the word I'm looking for? Trope of the fact that the adventurers come in, talk a big talk, take everything that's not nailed down, and then go out and die. And then, so I was just like, oh, I get what you're saying here. Whereas, again, this game is very much painting itself as, I mean, you could be that if you want to, but the biggest thing is that, like, none of these people are the chosen one, and you're not the chosen one either, so you're, like, just as likely to end up as dead as the rest of them, regardless of how good you say you are, kind of thing. To the point that he says, the guards have gotten very good at cleaning entrails out of the trees around town, even better than their actual job, because if they were good at their actual job, we wouldn't need you anyways. So some good shade thrown at RPG tropes and I guess the guards of town. So I'm wandering the wilderness now at this point, trying to get to this next quest that I took on for the mayor. I got murdered by wolves, so I had to restart. They're surprisingly, well, I guess not surprisingly, there's 3 of them, but they mauled me real good.
As wolves do.
Right? Yeah, don't mess with wolves is the moral of the story. And
Dances with Wolves is a very misleading title and not a recommended lifestyle.
They always make it seem so like the wolves are so nurturing. They'll just welcome you in their pack, right? Isn't that how it's supposed to work?
No, maybe in the Jungle Book, but not in RPGs.
Apparently not.
Wolves will attack you in packs, in fact.
Exactly. Or just run away, one or the other. Either way, these ones did not. They attacked a deer, and I thought I could go while they were attacking a deer, but one of them saw me, and then they chased me, and did not end well. So, moral of the story, it's a very cool, procedurally generated game. Like, even when I died and came back and went to the stores, they had different items available, so all that stuff kind of replenishes, it seems, with each. I'm not sure if every single time I start up the game or not, but it is nice to know that everything will kind of refresh, so I don't have to, I guess, only be stuck with the same stuff, but at the same time, if there's something I was eyeing, it sucks that it's gone. So there is that aspect. And otherwise, it's a pretty gorgeous game, and I do hope, like I said, that some balancing happens throughout, but I've been enjoying my preview experience more than not. I think I'm rising to the challenge that this game presents in its ridiculousness. As you have told me you're a fan of the rogues and roguelikes and stuff, Jono, it's probably up your alley once it gets like the full release and such.
Yeah, I mean, the trick is changing your perspective of progress. Learning the mechanics and mastering the mechanics has to be the progress rather than actually accomplishing anything.
Well, yeah, like I cleared the prologue finally because I started playing a bit more cautiously and trying to kite out enemies and keep some distance and waiting for spells to recharge, using a ranged weapon when I could and stuff like that. But again, even that like factors in like you're not guaranteed to hit things at range too, which is always funny when I cast a spell of Firebolt and it hit a door next to the monster instead of the monster. That's very frustrating, but that's just, sometimes you miss, or arrows go over their head and stuff like that, and you're like, dang it. Sometimes they break, sometimes you can retrieve them, and even then that mechanic seems a little broken, which is annoying, because there'll be times where like it seems I can pick up arrows, but if I run out of arrows, because it does the whole thing where you have a bow in one hand and the arrows in the other, and that's basically how you have equipped ammunition. But if you run out of the ammunition and you try to pick them up off the ground, but your inventory's full, it won't pick them up, which is really obnoxious. Oof. Yeah, that's one oversight I'd like to see them change. Like, there's no way... Because I remember in Diablo and even Torchlight, if you had your inventory open and you picked up something off the ground, even if your inventory was full, if you had a hand free that you could equip it, you at least had the option to drag it to a legal space, so to speak. But it doesn't count anything outside of the actual inventory section as a legal space. So I'm also hoping there's a backpack or something, because, yeah, it's very, again, the small inventory, it's going to kill me. I don't miss having, I miss having my Torchlight animal with me, having my ferret with me that I could send back to town.
That was always a brilliant mechanic in Torchlight that I'm glad they're embracing.
Yeah, I love it, and I wish more games had that. Yeah,
the trailers for Torchlight 3 are pretty encouraging.
It looks good.
They added the golden retriever to the available pets, and one of the classes is called a forge, where you're basically a robot that can attach 4 weapons to itself.
Oh, dope!
It's I'm excited by that one. I hope it turns out good. I think it's an alpha now.
As do I, because I really enjoyed my time with Torchlight 1 and 2, and 3 is going to be, if it's just more improving on the same, then I'm down.
It's a different development team, and it was originally envisioned as an MMO called Torchlight Frontier, or maybe Frontiers.
Which could have been pretty neat.
It was a neat idea, but then they sort of backtracked that, and it's now Torchlight 3 and a standalone RPG again. But I was ready to play it in whatever form it ends up being, and what we've seen so far looks pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. And I can't... Torchlight 2, did it have multiplayer? Like, basically...
Torchlight 2 did, 1 did not.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So it's like Diablo and such, where, yeah, you could have someone in there running around with you. And that's, really the only multiplayer that needs. Like, having it massive multiplayer, I guess, unless you start throwing in raids and yada yada, like... Yeah. It would definitely change the shape of the game.
Yeah, it's Diablo, but fun.
But I mean, Torchlight 1 is basically Diablo 1, and Torchlight 2 is basically Diablo 2 in framework. But they had a lot of smart wrinkles, including a second inventory on your pet and an option for the pet to travel back into town and sell off its entire inventory.
It's my favorite
thing.
And
that was a brilliant twist. And it sounds like Stone Shard is definitely taking ideas from a lot of these popular loot RPGs and action RPGs, but maybe doesn't have as many of the modern amenities and ideas like Torchlight 2 had.
Yeah, or I haven't unlocked them yet. That's the other option.
Right.
Maybe it's something I can get down the line. So we'll see. Like, again, I only just got out of the prologue, so we'll see how it goes. But presentationally, it's something the presentation is enough to keep me wanting more out of it. Like, I genuinely want to know what these characters are about, what they're trying to find, who these people are. Like, all 4 of these characters, as much as like I was curious about these 4 archetypes you got to choose and playing like something different from like your Sword and Shield, I was so into the character I picked's backstory of her being like a forsaken noble person, and just because she basically got taken for granted, taken advantage of, and lost her whole family inheritance basically. Like, I was actually invested in her story, so I'm wondering if more of that gets to come into play throughout the game, and how that will affect things, and like I said, where the whole mystery of these stone shards and everything else is going to take me. So if that's a good sign of that, it lets me get through like the troubling gameplay mechanics, then I will be back for more. Yeah,
it certainly doesn't sound like you're going to stop playing.
Exactly.
And this is in beta, so there's plenty of room for them to add improvements from fan feedback.
Absolutely, it seems consistently patching, so it's only a matter of time when it reaches, obviously, its best state, so to speak. But, moving along, as we should, we have Jono playing some more Yakuza 5 and other stuff, but how's the Yakuza 5 experience been going? Have you finished it up yet?
Finally beat it, yep. It was great. I have to say, again, I haven't played 6 or Judgment yet, but it might actually be my favorite. It's neck and neck with 0.
I was going to say, did it trump 0? So it's neck and neck, not quite.
0 has a better story. Not even close. 0 has an incredible story. 5 loses focus consistently, and I think that's just because there's multiple protagonists. And because of that, every character kind of picks up their own thread of the story, and they all come together in the end. And the problem is it doesn't all come together properly, and there are still a lot of loose ends and plot threads that just don't really get followed up on.
That's a bummer.
It is a bit of a bummer, but in terms of mechanics and in terms of content, sheer gameplay content, the game is just mind-numbing. And I talked a lot about it in the last episode. But
you hadn't got much into the daughter?
Yeah, Hakura's rhythm idol simulator game.
Yeah, so how did that basically... How much of that was the second half of the game?
Well, I think, like I said, I think I was just starting it in the last episode, I've never really been a fan of Guitar Hero or like rhythm games. They're just not really my thing, but I fell in love with the gameplay very, very quickly. And there are 3 songs that you have to learn. You're in this what's called the Princess League, and it's a reality show where you're competing with this duo, and whoever wins is going to get a recording contract. So there are 3 songs that you need to learn the dance and the lyrics to. You don't. All you need to learn is what buttons to push when. You can practice them all you want to perfect them, and then you get up and you perform them in front of a live studio audience. And what I didn't realize until I finished the game is you can actually lose, and the game will continue from there. It's not like it's a branching path or anything like that, but the storyline will adapt accordingly.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
It is.
It's not pass fail, which is cool.
But the songs are they're some of the most, they're earworms in a way that I can't think of a lot of other songs are. The main song, So Much More, you hear it nonstop. I think it's actually, they're trying to like simulate what it is to be an idol and have to sing the same stupid song nonstop all the time. Because you're singing it, you're doing it every like 10 minutes for almost her entire section. But eventually at least I started to develop a dependency on hearing this song. And now that I'm done with the game, every couple of days I'll pop on YouTube and just plug in the song and just listen to it.
You're hooked.
I'm hooked. And it's in my head. Like, it'll just play in my head when I'm in bed. And it's a problem because I don't speak Japanese. So it's just like gibberish in my head that sounds vaguely like the song, except for the word shiny. There's one English word in the song, shiny, and that's the only word.
You vaguely try and sing along.
As I vaguely try to sing along in my head. Yeah, exactly. And there's also a dance battle mechanic where you, again, there are a bunch of other songs that I think are original music, and you like do dance battles on the streets. And this replaces the usual Yakuza killing someone with a bicycle method of combat for her section anyway. And it's
because the other 2 characters, basically, that's their whole mechanic, right?
3 actually. Wait, 4.
Oh, I thought there was just 3. Okay, wow.
No,
right.
There's 5 playable characters in this thing.
The Yakuza 5 and Yakuza 5.
Yep. Except, yeah, it's 5 playable characters, and the game, I think I mentioned, like, there are all these different locations, there are all these different, like, fully realized neighborhoods of these cities, and the sad part is you are just playing them for each chapter. You can return to them after, but there's no real story reason to do so. So
you can just kind of wander around, and that's about it.
Yeah, you can get in a taxi and return to the city you came from, but it's sort of, it feels a little wasteful. Like these are fully realized places that they only use for individual chapters. And I would have liked to have gotten to know these areas a little bit better, or even to return to them as other characters, or that would have been kind of cool. But then again, I can't really complain, just because there's so much content in this game. I honestly don't think they could have packed any more in. I mean, like, I think I mentioned that there's a full taxi taxi simulator, there's a racing game, there is a hunting mini game, there's a baseball mini game, there's the dance mini game, and they're pretty fully realized. Some of them are better realized than a lot of commercial releases.
The only Yakuza game I've played is the Fist of the North Star game that by the same team that came out in 2018, and the mini games are a highlight in that one too, but with some twists. The baseball mini game is whacking bikers off of their bikes with steel beams, and the dance mini game in that is going to a clinic and beating off. Woohoo! Alternating punching dudes with hitting sick people with pressure points to the tune of, I don't know, the 1812 Overture or something. It's
well, after you said that entire sentence just sounds like a really bad euphemism.
Yeah, but the whoops. I mean, if you can beat off people until they ode to joy. But anyway, I was not impressed that much by the Fist of the North Star game.
Yeah, I saw your tweets about it.
But the mini games being a major highlight is definitely true of that one. So I'm not surprised that it's also true of one of the biggest Yakuza releases. I was a little turned off after Fist of the North Star. I didn't think it was a very satisfying game, but I am still Yakuza curious, and I own copies of Kiwami and Zero. So I might try and play one of those later this year. Maybe I can talk some people into podcasting about it.
I have a clue who you'd be able to convince that. Yeah, there's some Yakuza fans on the site. I'm a reasonably recent convert, but yeah, I think you'd like it. I've heard mixed things about North Star. I suspect at some point I will play it. After I finish the rest of the series, I'm probably just going to be like needing that Yakuza hit, and I'll try it out.
I don't know if I can really recommend it. It's a weird, condensed, bastardized version of the Fist of the North Star Part 1 story, and the Part 1 story is the only one people care about. And some of the over-the-top nonsense in the combat is great, but around the 1,000th time you do a head explosion finisher, it loses a little bit of its luster.
Yakuza does get a little bit like that too. Eventually, you're running around these cities and you're just constantly being jumped by. I mean, the joke that I love is what kind of like street punk walks around the street, sees Kiryu standing there like this giant brick wall of a man, and they're like, "That's an easy mark. Let's steal his money."
Yeah, no kidding.
Like every 5 minutes, there's someone who's like, "This is gonna be easy."
Let's roll him over.
But after you get to higher levels, I mean, the amount of experience you're gaining from individual combat is negligible, so it's not really leading you to the next level. And then after you finally get to your maximum level, there's really not a lot of reason to fight these guys, but running away from them is a pain in the butt, and you sometimes just end up in combat, and it does get a little bit boring. In some games more than others. That was, I think, one of my major criticisms of Kiwami 1 when I first played it. And I think it's one of those mechanics that you just eventually kind of get used to, the random combat. But, I mean, with an RPG like Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest, you're still gaining experience until you get to like the level cap, which is usually insane. It's a little less insane with Yakuza, though. Like, realistically speaking, you can max your level out. But yeah, I mean, Mike, if you decide you want to play one of the games and you want to talk about it, I am absolutely there.
Yeah, that may yet happen. But we have Retro Encounter games planned through May, but there's plenty of 2020 left. And I am interested in playing some more Yakuza after my slightly disappointing experience with Fist of the North Star.
I think Zero would probably be a. I like highly recommend in terms of the story for people to play Kiwami 1. I seem to be in the minority about that. I just firmly believe that a prequel is better if you already have a familiarity with the characters. That way you get to see where they came from and who they were before you played the game. That's part of the charm of a prequel. But that being said, Yakuza 0 works perfectly well as a standalone title.
Yeah, I listened to last week's episode where you thought it was a better idea to play Kiwami 1, and I've asked around a little bit, and the consensus seems to be that Kiwami 1 is valuable for just to introduce you to the world and characters, but Zero is a more entertaining game.
Zero is the best game in the series. It is. And 5 is giving it a run for its money in terms of gameplay, but yeah, it's the best game in the series.
And well, my podcast is called Retro Encounter, and which of those is more retro? The one that takes place in the 2000s or the one that takes place in the 80s?
Right?
I mean, if you really wanted to go retro, you could force us to play Yakuza 1.
Oh, not even Kiwami.
I don't think anybody would enjoy that direction.
There's a
for
small
the
part of me
podcast.
that just wants to go and give it a shot and see what it's like to play. I think I'd probably play it for like 15 minutes and be like, nope, nope, nope.
Well, didn't that kind of happen in the Lunar stuff where you had the different versions and someone wasn't playing the optimal version of Lunar 1? Or was it 2?
What?
In the Lunar podcast, because there's 2 different versions.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't there,
There are
one
several
subpar.
versions, yeah, and one panelist
Two are subpar.
I think Rob Fenner
Yes.
was playing the mobile version.
Oof.
And Lunar's a little different because the original Sega CD version and the remakes for Saturn and PS1 are significantly different games. But I think that in the case of Yakuza, Kiwami would be a much better idea than going back to Yakuza 1, unless it's for historical curiosity reasons. But again, my knowledge of it is a little limited, and my real reason for that is, well, I have Kiwami already, and you can get it easily on PSN, and I'm not sure there's a way to play PS2 Yakuza 1 unless you find a PS2 hard
Yeah,
copy.
that's fair.
I think all of the ones, I think right now, who knows when this thing is going to be released, but I think all of them are on sale right now on Steam.
As
Possibly. I got 0 on sale. They go on sale regularly enough to, that I think waiting for a sale is not the worst idea if you're again interested but not
it
dedicated.
was probably in the Big
I
in
agree.
Japan sale too. I imagine it was on the PS4.
Yeah, the big in Japan sale just ended. It ended on March 5th or 6th.
But it seems to be
But the,
annual, so
but
the
it'll
5th.
probably come back again.
yeah. Mhm.
I know it just ended because I literally just bought Yakuza 6 in Judgment.
Oh, there you go.
I was like, last day of sale. Do I really want it? Yes.
I'm really interested in Judgment because I might have mentioned this on the podcast and I apologize, but the main character of Judgment is a pretty well known Japanese celebrity. I forget his full name, but he's usually called Takun or Taki-kun. He was on a extremely popular Japanese drama called Hero in the early 2000s, which was also about a sort of vigilante do-good lawyer.
Right, yes. I do remember you talking about this now, yeah.
Yeah, and that show it's one of the best J dramas I've ever seen. And the fact that the first video game that this Japanese TV star is using his likeness for is a Yakuza adjacent game about a lawyer with nothing to lose is a little bit apt, and also people like it. I mean, I think Zach reviewed it for the website and gave it a pretty good score.
He did. Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm very interested in Judgment, but I'm going to try a main series Yakuza game before I jump to that.
Well, you know what would be cool? I mean, I recommend you try a main series, but with Judgment, I mean, it's completely unrelated to the rest of the storylines, but it takes place in the same neighborhood. And one of the things I love about this series is because every game takes place in the same neighborhood, you get to see it develop and change over a couple of decades. Like I've mentioned, I think it'd be cool if like your first experience with the Yakuza series was in a modern version of the neighborhood, and then you got to go back and see what it was like earlier on. But I mean, yeah. I recommend playing any one you want. It's a great series.
I'm interested, and it may yet happen. It may yet be podcasted about, but that is speaking in the future tense.
It's true.
So maybe we
Yes.
should say in the present.
Well, I can use this as a really easy segue because other games that deal with idol culture and accurate representations of their neighborhoods would be Tokyo Mirage Sessions, Sharp FE Encore, which just came out for the Switch back in January, I believe. Yeah, it was the 17th, and then it was originally released back in 2015 of December. So it's been a few years since we got a nice remaster. Nathan said it was a pretty faithful, well done remaster when he was on the episode last time. And so you've been playing it as well because we have some podcasts coming up involving it, do we not?
Yes, Nathan and I are going to be podcasting about it later this month. Wait, no, that's a lie. No, it's right. Yeah, later this month. Episodes in late March, and I'm about halfway through. I think I'm in chapter 4, and I think the game has 6 chapters, or maybe 6 plus finale kind of deal. So around halfway done, and I'm enjoying it a lot. The irony of it is that it was marketed as SMT Cross FE, is like Shin Megami Tensei and Fire Emblem, but really this is just 80% of the way to being a Persona game. It is it's Persona action, Persona quotidian elements like going around town and hanging out with your friends, and the gameplay is basically hammering weaknesses and upgrading your Mirage in this game, but it's similar to
basically a Persona,
a concept of a Persona. Basically a Persona, yeah. It's I don't have a very deep interest in idol culture stuff, and when I complete a side quest and they reward me with a new skill and an anime girl music video, I'm much more interested in the new skill. But I think mechanically this RPG is really, really rock solid. When you pull off long combos, it's really satisfying. The combat, like they're consistently adding wrinkles to combat and giving you new stuff to play with every chapter and every upgrade. And every character represents sort of a Fire Emblem character or a Fire Emblem class, but they all fit together very well. It's a really good, entertaining RPG that I think almost in spite of all the Japanese entertainment industry nonsense. So if you really don't like pastel-colored anime TV shows about idol girls like Love Live or thereabouts, then maybe this isn't the game for you. But if you can at least tolerate that, then this is a really good RPG with a veneer of Japanese pop music that I sometimes like, sometimes don't. But the RPG part of the RPG is great.
It definitely kind of looks like Excitement and Joy the RPG, just because of its color palette and just how explosive all that is, coupled with the pop elements.
Everything is so flashy. Like every attack is just over the top or goofy or has a rainbow explosion attached to it. And again, eventually, if you hit enemy weaknesses and you have enough session skills basically means like skills that are able to chain together. You can get I think the highest I've gone is a 16 hit combo chain, and watching a 16 hit combo chain with a sort of special move in the middle and a finisher move at the end is just a delight. Like I love seeing huge numbers appear after attacks in an RPG. It's part of why I play RPGs.
So
it's part of why and it's like 70% of the reason why I'm a Disgaea
I was going to say, I feel like this is a very particular niche for you.
Oh yeah. Oh, I love watching numbers incrementally increase, let me tell you. But yeah, this game is basically a Persona game with some SMT elements in the writing and combat, because this is developed by Atlus, and Fire Emblem elements really just with style and imagery. Like the elemental weaknesses are the Fire Emblem weapon types. And you summon the 7 main characters summon 7 Fire Emblem characters from either Fire Emblem 1 or Fire Emblem Awakening. Because, this game came out in 2015, and 1 is the original Fire Emblem is the classic, and Awakening came out in 2013, shortly before Tokyo Mirage Sessions did. So it's really good. Don't go in there expecting a hardcore Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne or 4, and don't go in there expecting a thoughtful tactical RPG like Fire Emblem. But like a game that has sprinklings of those two things, but is basically a goofy Persona game. That's what this game is, and I'm having a lot of fun. Again, I'm about halfway through, and there's no danger of me finishing it in time. I'm definitely going to get this one finished in time, as long as Final Fantasy XIV doesn't take over my entire life.
Which it definitely is at risk of doing.
Yeah, it hasn't gotten there, but there's always a chance.
Well, with Final Fantasies taking over lives, we have our good old Final Fantasy VII Remake coming out soon, and the demo just dropped, which I sadly hasn't been able to take over my life, but there was definitely a lot of chatter in our Slack channel of people being like, cool, I'm just going to quit work for the day and just going to play this. But Mike, you were saying, because it's got a lot of similarities to the E3 demo, you didn't have to put as much time into it, per se?
Oh, well, no, I put the full amount of time into it, but
okay, cool.
The E3 demo, which I think is the same one that was shown at both PAXs, or maybe 3 PAXs, and also Gamescom, it was about 15 minutes, and this demo starts before the E3 demo and goes a little bit past it. It's basically the entire bombing mission and a little bit after the Scorpion boss. While the demo I played last year was just a few mobs of enemies before the Scorpion boss and then the Scorpion boss. If you're aware of the first hour of Final Fantasy VII, you know what I'm talking
And
about.
how long does the demo really take?
About an hour. Between 45 minutes and an hour.
Okay, so it's a good sampling, basically.
Yes, I think it's the very beginning of the game. Maybe with a few pieces cut out a little bit.
Perhaps, yeah. I'm wondering if it'll let you just pick up
yeah.
in the full game or not, or if there's any benefit to your save data or whatever.
I don't think so. I mean, there isn't enough worth saving, I think, especially if the full game is a little bit more fully featured than this. I doubt there's a carryover, but it might be. I haven't done any research into that.
I mean, most of these games these days, I guess, do some sort of benefit if they detect, I guess, demo data. So they might be like, you'll get a cool materia or something.
Yeah, but I mean, but this isn't like the Dragon Quest XI Switch demo, which can go up to 20 hours, and you would really want that to carry over. This is just a perhaps truncated version of the very beginning. That's just to get fans a little excited.
Absolutely, and
people are very excited. I mean, I think it's been well received, and I hope I don't seem too muted on this podcast because it's awesome. Like this makes me more interested to playing the remake, and it was already a day one purchase for me.
And it seems like a great way to kind of try before you buy, for sure. Like if you weren't sold, this is the best way to figure out if you will be, because I think the biggest thing for a lot of people is, will they like the new mechanics? And if this has enough of the battles and stuff like that for people who couldn't demo at 83, this is the way to find out, will I like this new gameplay system, which some people have been comparing to 15. And you've, like you said, played it at 83 and now playing it here. Is it very similar to 15's mechanics, or?
I haven't played a lot of 15, but I think it's a little bit more relaxed than 15. You basically you walk around and can do regular attacks, which deal a very small amount of damage, but do build up the enemy's stun meters. So if you chain enough attacks together, you can stun enemies. But while you're doing these light attacks, your three characters have their ATB meters going up, just like an old Final Fantasy game before 2000. And when it's someone's turn, you're able to go to that character, and it not quite pauses, but it goes into like super slow motion. So like in the background, people are still barely moving. But instead of doing a regular attack magic item, or like you would in an old Final Fantasy game, you only have special attacks. Or items. So it's not like there's no regular attack option when you use someone's ATB meter.
Okay, so it's not quite as, I guess, control heavy as, say, 12 was with swapping between characters and such.
No, I think it's a little bit more active than 12. It's like you're doing regular attacks and moving around, but then when someone's ATB meter goes up all the way, then you can use an item or cast a spell or use a special attack. But it's not. It's just that not all of your moveset is determined by the ATB, just the moves that matter.
Gotcha.
And I'm not sure exactly if it preserves the same limit break system that old FF7 did, because Braver and Cross Slash are just sort of special attacks that Cloud has now. And Cloud and Barret feel very different because their movement and attacks outside of ATB are very different. So they feel more unique to control and less like, just characters on the screen that have slightly different choices in their menus.
And that's great.
But it felt great. I know that a lot of people have strong feelings about Final Fantasy VII, and for it to quote unquote turn into an action RPG is very distasteful to some fans. But it's not that. They're really trying to bridge the gap between an action RPG and an old school Final Fantasy game from 4 through 9.
It seems to be getting really. It seems like they're nailing it really well, paying really good attention to those things and trying to mix it as best they can.
It's definitely a mix. It doesn't feel like either of those things. It does not feel like a pure action RPG or exactly like an old Final Fantasy game. But what it is really fun and intriguing, and balancing the ability to deal a lot of damage to bosses with building the stun meter to try, because when an enemy is stunned, they take extra damage, and there's extra stuff you can do, and doing things like targeting the Scorpion robot's legs and tail for it to trip over or to interrupt its attacks is a little bit more nuanced than what the boss battle was in 1997. There's it's like this. There was a little bit of that in 1997, but not
yeah,
to
they
this,
tried their
not-
best
not
to give
this
a little
level.
tactical element, but this definitely ups that ante, which is something I found 15 was missing. Even though I enjoyed the combat, it didn't have enough of that tactical element to it, and I think this is
There's-
nice to introduce that.
There's a surprising amount of tactical elements to the combat from what little I've played, but which is again 15 minutes last year and then 45 minutes a few days ago.
Yeah,
And,
I need to dive in myself, and then I'll have to weigh in.
But
We'll
what
talk
this
about it next
is extremely exciting and extremely promising. I think that this feels really good so far, but of course, I mean, there's still a lot for this game to prove in terms of its final product, especially it's standing in the shadow of one of the most popular RPGs of all time. So there's, I mean, this is not time for a final verdict, but this is an exciting demo that you should play. Also, I'm not sure if we mentioned this. If you download the demo, I think before the end of April, maybe a little bit later, maybe it's like a date in May, then you get a free PS4 theme at the time of when the game releases.
Which is great, actually. It's really it's a rare thing for them to release a free one, let alone and usually like because usually you have to buy like pre-order, and then you get that stuff. So getting it from the demo, and it's a really nice looking theme.
It is, and usually a theme like that will be available for $5 like a year after the game comes out. But still, it's a nice extra carrot on the stick for fans, and it is a nice looking theme.
It's one of those games that I think everyone's on the same page. I can't believe it exists just because of the length of time that we've been talking about a Final Fantasy VII remake. I think the graphic demo was in 2005 for the PlayStation 3, and then it's been 15 years since then, and this thing was announced 5 years ago, and the idea it's finally coming out is sort of mind-blowing.
Well, it's the fact that it's a real thing, and it's a really good looking thing. I was going to ask you actually, Mike, back on Retro 184 in 2018, I think it was December 2018. No, it wasn't December. It was August. When you had it was you, Leona, Rob, and Rob Rogan, and Peter, when you were talking about your hopes and fears for it. How much,
yes.
Is any of that lining up so far? I mean, we obviously haven't seen the full thing, but even just in these opening moments, do you remember much from that?
Yeah, people were concerned about specific plot points, and Peter was hoping the game was go into a more turn-based direction, and I think it's gone more in that direction than I assumed it would. So I hope Peter's happy with it, because I think the turn-based parts of this combat feel good. We were talking about a few more big picture things on that podcast that might not even be visible in this release. Since
Yeah,
again,
true,
this is
Midgar.
this is a part. Yeah, this is a part one that ends either at the end of Midgar or maybe just after the end of Midgar. Like my theory from the beginning was this was going to end in Kalm, but
That'd be a good spot. I agree.
yeah, but it sounds like that Sephiroth is going to make an appearance before Kalm, because remember in the original Final Fantasy VII, you don't see Sephiroth until the flashback. You just see the aftermath of a horrible run of murder he does in Midgar.
Yeah,
but
And
we
Midgar
see
Zolom is after Calm, right?
Yeah, the Midgar Zolom is
Right.
immediately after Kalm,
Right.
outside the Chocobo Ranch place. But I don't know exactly how much of the stuff we talked about in that episode will manifest here. Like I remember us being concerned about the Honeybee Inn, but when we see the Honeybee Inn briefly in one of the recent trailers for the game, I think the trailer that came out in
Looks very
February.
exciting.
It looks like a Busby Berkeley musical or something. It looks crazy, and that's a much more fun interpretation than the sort of gross voyeuristic stuff from the original release. So I'm I don't know how much I'll love all the choices this game makes, especially since Final Fantasy VII is not my favorite FF game, but it is a game that's very important to me. My feelings are overwhelmingly more positive than negative going into this hype cycle.
It would be really neat once the full release comes out of this and the sequel, or all three parts, or whatever it is, and going back and listening to that to episode 148 and just seeing where things landed, and then having like a revisit with the panel and be like, so are we all happy? Are we not? It'd be kind of fun. Anyways, that's for you to figure out.
It's funny, we were talking earlier about how Square does fan service and how good they are at it, and I find I'm vaguely amused by the fact that like this game really is playing up fan service, because they know exactly how much Final Fantasy VII means to people. But right down to the demo, I remember what it was like in 1996 when the demo of Final Fantasy VII came out, and how exciting it was, and how you got this I think it's the same slice of the game.
It is, yeah. Someone was saying this is the exact same demo, basically,
Yeah.
that was released originally, although you had to get it through like a magazine disc kind of thing.
I think it was Tobal 1. It was a fighting game. It was a disaster. I remember renting it from Abercrombie Video just to play the demo of Final Fantasy VII.
Abercrombie Video, take a shot.
That's the game that had some Akira Toriyama designs.
I can't remember. I think I played it for like 3.5 minutes, and then I just played the Final Fantasy VII demo for the rest of the weekend.
Yeah. I remember
here
Tobal
it is.
number 2. Yeah, Tobal number 2 is famously a game that was never released worldwide, but it was a fighting game for the PlayStation, and then the sequel for PlayStation 2 that with character designs from Akira Toriyama, creator of Dragon Ball and artist of Dragon Quest.
Nope, same here. Tobal number 1 has the same designer.
Yep. I played a little bit of Tobal number 1, but Tobal number 2 was sort of a famously the West never got it kind of game that I've only read about.
I'm pretty sure that, despite the fact that let's see here, I got okay reviews, but I mean, realistically speaking, they knew Squaresoft, as they were known at the time, knew what they were doing. They knew it was going to be a vehicle for the 7 demo. But the fact that that this demo has sort of raised the same level of excitement that the original demo did, it's the same slice of the game. It's almost like fan service as marketing, and I think it's genius.
Yeah, those conversations were coming up actually coupled with the hype of this game of the demo discs, and oftentimes there were games that we got for the demo discs. I mean, I think my friends had that happen with Armored Core. He got a PlayStation magazine or some gaming magazine, and it came with a demo disc for the original Armored Core, and we played that thing so much, and it was so limited, and people were trying to get the Final Fantasy VIII one, but that came with Brave Fencer Musashi. Is that right? I forget. At any rate, it was a very interesting time, and the marketing, the fact that it worked out, and you're exactly right. Like, they knew what they were doing, and they knew what they had on their hands, and the original game may not have worked out, but at least people knew what they wanted from 7. That's for sure. And it's no surprise that they would do the same thing here, right? Was there even any leak of this demo coming out? Because it was just a complete surprise to me that it was just like, hey, waking up, here it is.
I don't remember because it also dropped in something like 3 a.m. on East Coast time.
Yeah, it took me off
and
guard, too.
and everyone seemed surprised. If there was a leak, I didn't hear it.
Yeah, so I think it was a total just surprise, enjoy. So that's pretty cool.
We get so few of these nowadays.
Yeah, exactly, because everything either gets leaked or they telegraph it from forever, or they're saying it's coming out, whatever. Usually we get those surprises at E3 or maybe during a Nintendo Direct, and that's about it. It's going to be very hard to top the surprise of Trials of Mana, that's for sure, and the whole Mana collection.
Oh yeah, that completely blew my mind. I was at our hotel room with some other RPG fan people in Los Angeles when we got that announcement, and I just started laughing uncontrollably. I didn't know how to process it.
Right? Yeah. You're like Chrono when he's confused.
Yeah, and I do the Kefka laugh that somehow also made it into Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we're likely to get more of those surprises recently with the cancellations of all of the conventions. I think we're going to be looking at a lot more directs from a lot more developers in the near future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no concrete news, and it's not something to get too much into, but it's something we could definitely speculate. What's going to happen now with COVID-19 kind of swearing a lot of people away from conventions, and it's been worth talking about that E3 has not necessarily been a dying breed, but its relevance has been cast into question over the past few years, and now even more developers are kind of backing off from what it's become, I guess, or just recognizing it's cheaper for us to just stream this.
Yeah, because it's tremendously expensive to have a large booth space at E3. Just how many months they prepare for it takes away from developer resources, and I've spoken to developers
at top marketing.
Yeah, I've spoken to developers at E3, and they said that they really only go to hang out with other developers, and because preparing for E3 takes away from development. They usually have to make a demo that is extra work that could go towards the main game, and it's expensive, and people are often traveling away from their offices. It's not always a fun thing for the game makers. but it does get eyes on upcoming games. But that was more important in an area. Well, that was more important in a time of pre-streaming, and in an area where with no smartphones.
Yeah.
Where E3 was an event that would receive heavy magazine and website coverage, and it still receives heavy magazine and website coverage. But now, these companies could easily stream an event like a Nintendo Direct or I forget what Sony's version of that is called. But Sony also didn't have their December PlayStation experience in 2019, which they had in previous years. So I think that in general, moving away from physical conventions and to sort of these digital news blasts is a trend that's going to continue. And having the COVID-19 virus really throw a wrench into people's travel plans is, again, exacerbating it.
I think it's going to accelerate the trend.
Yeah, it's a move that was already happening, and now I don't want to call this a death knell or anything, but I think that E3 2020 is going to be scaled down further from 2019, and also there was the issue of the data leak that happened shortly after E3 last year.
Right, yeah, which you talked a bit about the pre-show, and it's been talked of. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast before, but it's definitely something we've talked about amongst our PG Fan staff, and some of our names are from the team were on that list for sure. That got leaked, and that definitely put a bad taste in many people's mouths. Thankfully, I don't think anything too bad came from it, but it's the fact that it was even possible from something so big is a little ridiculous.
Yeah, it was shocking, and I think that if this does, it might happen this year. Like it has, to be completely honest, as of this recording, it has not been canceled yet. It is still on.
Yeah.
It is still on. If it is canceled, it will be interesting to see how the 2021 E3 will look if it happens at all. But I think you're right. They might have to scale it back, or they might have to change it into something else. In other words, it might need to evolve.
Yeah, it definitely might need to get reshaped, and it could turn into a digital-only show at some point. And which is, the green person in me likes that from a resource management point of view, that we're not wasting money and resources on totally expendable, marketing crap. There's posters and statues and all this stuff that really, after that, they do their kind of convention run, I'll just probably end up in the garbage, or if someone's lucky enough from staff gets to take it home until they don't care about it anymore. But beyond that, it's such a huge consumption of stuff. But it is also, it's a wonderful mecca for journalists to get their hands on stuff, and I guess now the public, and take that for what it is, letting the public in or not, how much that has helped it or hurt it is up for debate. I know there's journalists still get their time with the stuff before the general public's allowed in, if I'm not mistaken. It's how it has been in the past couple of years that they've allowed it, but it still crowds the floor once that all kind of opens up, and it makes it hard to get to the demos, and if you didn't get to them already, kind of thing. Mike, you've been to a bunch of them, and Johnny, you were looking forward to going this year, but now with it being postponed, who knows?
I was looking forward, yeah.
Or it's possible being postponed, rather.
Yeah, I've been to the last four, and
how marked was the change from the first two you went to, and then the most recent two with public being allowed?
The time where the public goes in, everything became much more crowded, and it was really impossible to move around some of the biggest spaces. Like Nintendo always is one of the best designed, but also most crowded booths. And I think the wait to play Link's Awakening last year was in the 3-hour range. During the after the public was allowed, and I remember
Sounds like
2
PAX.
years, 2 year in 2018. I got in line to play Mega Man 11, the Mega Man 11 demo, and it was a little over an hour. But I had whatever. I had a 3DS. I think I played some Zelda and some Mega Man while waiting for Mega Man. But
well
but I think the most compelling part of going to E3 is playing pre-release games and talking to developers about the games they're making, and the public access version of E3 is much less of that, because I'm going as part of RPG Fans Contingent. We have scheduled appointments to talk about to talk to developers and do private demos. That's a lot of work because we also have to do write-ups to do, but it's much more compelling than going and mostly waiting in line for access to fewer things than I would have as a member of the press. So I think that my favorite E3 might have been Might have been 2018 because that was just the one that had the most games I was interested in because I got to play demos for Dragon Quest and Mega Man and discover a couple games I might not have found out about otherwise. But that's really just because of the games I played. And E3's been changing generally and is less the sort of like, it feels less exclusive and secretive than the E3s I read about that happened in the 2000s and late 90s.
It sounds like it used to be a trade show, and now it's much more like a convention.
Yes, and it's still towing the line between trade show and convention.
And you would argue if that was like the evolution it needed to make to stay relevant and keep making money. But it clearly still has some evolving to do to maintain its relevancy.
Yes, I don't have a lot of faith in the organization that runs E3, especially after that data leak last year. I think that if it wants to continue to allow the public more time in, I think it should maybe expand to 4 days and have like 1 day be industry only, just so people can get a lot of work done without the public, and then make the last 3 days public and industry, just to give the public more time at the show, and also just give more like make the public feel like they're part of the industry a little bit more. Give them more pre-release games to play instead of games that are already out, and try to have more demos available and less line waiting happen, because it feels like it feels like a disappointing convention if you're a go as a member of the public, I think. And I think that if they tried to bridge the gap between developer and public a little more, that would be a smart move. But I'm not sure the best way to do that, and I'm not sure E3 in its current state can really do that, especially since big players like Sony seem to be dropping out rather than more likely to start up again.
Yeah, and looking at it from a consumer point of view, I totally get what they're after. They're after the same feeling that I got when I would get like the E3 issue of Game Players when I was in my teenage years.
Ditto. It's the only magazine I got every year, really.
Yeah, and I would destroy that issue. Just I was at Christmas, I was back at my parents' place, and I found like a box of them downstairs, and consistently the E3 issues were just without covers. They were like missing pages just because I would tear into them, apparently almost literally. And that's what I think the audiences are after. They want that feeling that they're getting the preview, that they're getting to see something that not everybody else sees. They're getting the door opened and they get to peek inside. And if they're just playing games that are already released, that's not the experience they want and they're after.
And I mean, to possibly, I guess, reach out to developers and stuff more easily and get that direct contact, like the streaming route might be the way to go, because then developers can invest, slightly less money and time, but also the time and money they feel is much more constructive into a digital presentation, be it a live stream where they can then at the end of it do an FAQ and take some listener feedback, or have pre-asked questions or whatever, or if it is more in the vein of Nintendo Direct and such like that. Like, they get to cater the experience and do it on their own time and budget and not have to send scads of people and product to the showroom floor. And that gives fans a more immediate feedback, a more immediate consumption of it, right?
And I think on our side, this is a hunch. I have no idea if this is the case or not, but I have an odd feeling that with the advent of more video game streaming services, that game journalists, the press, so to speak, it's sort of, you don't really have to go to E3 to play previews anymore. Eventually, they're just going to be able to stream the preview directly to individual journalists, and they get to play for a predetermined length of time. And that is going to be infinitely cheaper than having to set up systems and bring people in and make appointments.
Exactly.
All they have to do is digitally set up a time in their servers where they say, okay, well, this site is playing it for an hour here, this site's playing it for an hour here, this site's playing it for an hour here, and they can get it all done in a day.
Yeah, and they just get a dev on the live stream with them, and then they can answer questions and talk through it and stuff, and you still get that connection, right? The big thing is just control, right? I guess the only reason why that hasn't happened before is because the worry of leaks and such.
Yeah, and I think if the games are being run off their servers, they might have to worry about video leaks, but if they put a watermark on each one, they'll know exactly where it's coming from.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if Netflix can block that sort of technology, except for the mostly savvy people who really are trying to get around it, there has to be a way. But it's definitely the biggest thing for them to overcome is, the control of how the material gets disseminated. And
it wasn't until recently that this even was going to be a possibility. In fact, it's still not a possibility for people who do not have I don't know, the next 3 to 4 years, that's going to change. It's going to change a lot. I mean, personally, this is a conversation topic for another time. I'm not a huge fan of the idea of streaming games. I say I like owning a game, but the reality is I don't own a game. It's files on a system that I'm downloading from Steam. But I feel like the technology is going to advance. It's going to keep getting better until it is nearly indistinguishable from playing the game on your own system. And I think at that point, it's going to open up a lot of doors for developers to preview their games with journalists or beta testers without even needing to distribute copies. They can just run them on their own servers. And that will give them a higher level of control over what gets leaked, what doesn't, and be able to track the leaks. Again, I don't have the inside track on this, certainly not. This is just a feeling I have that the industry is probably heading there. And if that happens, the main reason why you even have E3 goes away completely. It evaporates. And then you genuinely could just make it into a video game convention.
Yeah, it's definitely a big conversation. And like, there's no immediate answer to how it can or will change. And you like to think that's something that the creators are scratching their heads over, but you know, like Mike said, there's some faith to be re-earned from them as well with all that. So yeah.
Yeah.
At
Still,
any rate,
I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed that I won't be able to go this year, potentially.
you may be able to go digitally. We'll find out.
I don't think I'm going to make an effort to attend this year. I mean, I've had my large vacation be Los Angeles 4 years in a row, so maybe it's time to save my money and my hours and go somewhere else this year.
Go to Los Angeles and go to Disneyland.
I have done that. My sister lives in Los Angeles and writes for an entertainment magazine, so I've used my E3 trips also as an excuse to visit her.
Which is
Absolutely.
good.
Just take your 3DS and you can play Mega Man and while you wait to get on Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, now you can go.
I'll play Mega Man on my 3DS anyway. You can't stop me.
Regardless of what I do. At any rate, I feel like this has been a good chunk of stuff to discuss, and we can probably wrap this episode up because
Yes.
you know, we're doing all right.
Yeah.
Thanks for some solid discussion, fellows. I appreciate having you around.
Thank you. I appreciate us being around.
Yeah, you know, you're both knowledgeable blokes.
I appreciate talking to people about shared experiences, which is my favorite thing to do, which is why I enjoy podcasting so much.
Yeah, right? I feel like if you don't, then why podcast? Like, that's sharing is caring. Everyone else who's been sharing with us in their ears, thanks for being here. Thanks for continuing to listen and keep our podcasts alive. We do have a few of them. If you don't want to listen to Random Encounter, you can go listen to Retro Encounter, which is hosted by what's that guy's name again?
A lot of people. Yeah, it sometimes has different hosts month to month. It depends on what's going on with the podcast. But I've known to host a couple of them.
Yes, you have been. The driving force behind that is, of course, Mike Solosi. Thank you for keeping that going. It goes at a crazy rate, and that is largely due to you. So thank you, sir.
I've had to miss weeks a couple times in 2019 and 2020, which is a great shame of mine. But I still, work hard to try and put out a podcast every week that's at least a little interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And based on what you told us in this episode, there's some exciting things going on in the future.
Sure, yeah. We're doing 2 episodes on Soul Blazer in April. I mentioned already that we're doing 2 episodes on Tokyo Mirage Sessions in March. And if you go back and listen to some backlogs in 2020, that you'll find 2 episodes on Suikoden 5 and 2 episodes on Nier Automata happened recently. So it's we're all over the place. That is I think that is 4 different generations of video game systems that I just mentioned. Depending on where you place the Wii U versus the PS4.
Yeah,
but we're all over the place with Retro Encounter, and there's a lot more planned in the future that I'm not gonna mention yet.
How very retro.
But we'll get there, no doubt.
Maybe some Yakuza, maybe some Stone Shard. Was that what it was? Shard Stone.
Stone Shard, yes. Give it
Stone Shard. Yeah,
give
sure.
it 5 years, then, well, I guess 2 years technically, and it'll count.
Yep, we'll. The Retro Encounter title is more just words without meaning. We can play a game for the podcast as long as it's 2 years old or older, and if we want to talk about a recent game, we just attach the word spoiler cast to the end and don't care.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, you could pull the whole rule of my show, my rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly allowed. That being said, if you don't want to deal with Solosi's rules, you can go listen to Rhythm Encounter, our still very quiet, not so quiet music podcast about RPG music, and definitely recommend some good listening on that. Good recommendations for stuff you may not have heard before. And finally, if you want to keep even more current with current events, Hat and Eric have the RPG Fan Adjacent now podcast, I guess, yeah, whatever, Phoenix Edge. So go listen to them and give them some love. They also record that live, so you can even watch them while they're recording. I don't know if they have fan interaction. Have you watched any episodes, Mike?
No, I've listened to several episodes, and watched them stream a couple times. They stream on Monday or Tuesdays via YouTube. And they do have some fan interaction with comments and in Discord. And they even had one podcast fan join them as a panelist for one episode.
Very fun. That was kind of always my dream when I was listening to Random Encounter back in the day. I always wanted to be and even on Rhythm Encounter, I just wanted to be a fan, a guest at some point, and then to the point that I just bullied my way on to being a host. So there you go. Here I am now. Haha, it can happen.
It's good to have goals.
Right?
Yeah, I started out complaining on the forums about stuff they're getting in the podcast wrong, and then I ended up joining RPG Fan in 2014 as part of the music section.
You complaining about informational inequities? Never.
Yeah, no, I'm the worst at that. I'm the most annoying version of a YouTube or Facebook comment. But I did start the Random Encounter drinking game on the forums several years ago. I'm a little proud of that.
What were the rules?
If Rob talks about Dark Souls or Diablo,
Amen.
Or if Steven talks about Phantasy Star or Sega, and if I forget, there was a Derek one too, but I forget what it was. I'd have to go through some 2013 forum posts to find it.
Which, who wants to do that? Well, right now the only one we currently have is every time Abercrombie Video gets mentioned. It seems to be the going joke. And probably even more so now that Jono's an official co-host. It'll come up a lot more.
If you really want to update it, you can say every time Jono mentions Yakuza, take a drink.
Yeah.
You're going to get smashed by the end of every episode, apparently.
Yakuza, the Dark Souls of RPG fans, Random Encounter. And on that note, folks, let's keep going with the outro train.
I thought Dark Souls was already the Dark Souls of RPG fans, Random Encounter.
I don't know. Has it faded with Rob? Was Rob the Dark Souls of RPG fans, Random Encounter?
I mean, it's retro.
Or was he the?
We've never done a Souls episode of Retro Encounter, although we have talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, and there's some of them that definitely at this stage would be probably more digestible, even like Dark Souls 3 or Bloodstained. Yeah, that's up to you folks.
You mean Bloodborne?
Sorry, Bloodborne. Yeah, sorry, Bloodstained is a very different game, but we've talked about before.
Bloodstained is the Igarashi game that came out last year.
It involves rituals of the night and such. At any rate, if you want to email us about informational inequities, you can email us at podcast@rpgfan.com. You can send me all kinds of questions and stuff. I would like, as always, more than just spam. You can also catch me on the Discord, like I said, very improperly. And I said I would fix it later. So GDelmy, there, actually said my name. You can find me on the Discord. Hit me up with questions. Cyanide, it's been really nice having a chat with you about Pillars of Eternity. And one day I'll play it. We'll talk about it on the episode, and you can tell me more things about it. I think so far here, the only person who's really played it is Solosi. So, you know.
It's pretty good. It's a well written.
It looks neat.
It's a well written game that feels like the CRPGs from 20 years ago, but control much better than those old Infinity Engine games. Yeah, and also the psychic abilities you can play with in that game get really fun.
Oh, that sounds cool. That's something I wish they had introduced for even like the Baldur's Gates as they went along, because in 3.5 they started having psionic rules. I mean, I don't know if they redid that in the old like Dark Suns game, because that was the only setting that really had a lot of psionic rules. But until when they started switching over to the 3.5 model, that's something that was sadly not there, so that's cool. I'd like to play with that. Psyonix is fun.
I didn't finish Pillars of Eternity, but that game is fun and definitely worth a shot, especially if you have nostalgia for that kind of game.
As I do, and especially with Baldur's Gate 3 coming up on the horizon, which we'll talk about that more in the future. I need to watch.
Oh, that's
that
right.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of want to go back through the first two and gear up for it, so we shall see. Do a little Western RPG, CRPG month of streaming or something. We'll figure it out. Who knows?
The gameplay preview looks incredible.
Right? Anyways. That's a whole other podcast. This podcast is coming to an end. That's it. Putting on the brakes. We're turning this thing around. We're going home, everybody. So thank you all so much for listening. Thank you so much for consistently giving us feedback on Instagram, Facebook, and the Twitters at RPG Fancom.
Seriously, if you guys have any questions or anything you want us to talk about, just drop us a line and we'll consider it.
Absolutely. Consider is the key word. On that note, for myself, Jono, and Mike, take care, everybody. Until next time, bye-bye.
Be seeing you.
Bye.
This is a crossover on par with, like, Endgame.
Okay, it's more like a crossover where Jessica Fletcher from Murder, She Wrote went to Miami and teamed up with Magnum PI. That's the crossover.
I'll take it. The only way in which this is like Avengers Endgame is that Thanos has already started to make things disappear, and that's why there's no rhythm encounter.
Oof.
Oh.
Sad horn.